Some acts of kindness echo across time in ways you never expect. Michael Grant was no stranger to solitude. The vast, uninhabited plains of the West were both his refuge and his prison. A rancher by trade, Michael spent his days mending fences, tending cattle, and repairing the aging barns of his property, a place where dust never seemed to settle and the sun always beat down with unyielding force. But it wasn't the hard work that wore him down, it was the silence. The land was endless, but so was his isolation. The loss of his wife years ago had left him with nothing but the cattle to care for, and no one to speak to but the occasional traveler who passed through. The days passed in monotonous repetition, each one blending into the next with little to distinguish them. Then, one day, everything changed. As Michael was returning from the river, his eyes caught something, a small figure, barely more than a shadow, stumbling through the brush. At first, he thought it was an animal, but as he got closer, his heart sank. It was a child, covered in dirt, her clothes torn, and her face streaked with the remnants of dried tears. She was barely conscious, her steps faltering as she tried to walk. Without thinking, Michael dropped his reins and rushed to her side. Kneeling down, he gently placed his hand on her trembling shoulder, trying to steady her. She looked up at him with wide, terrified eyes, and in a faint, hoarse voice, she said, "Please, they're coming, take me back." The words made no sense at first, but there was no mistaking the fear in her eyes. Michael knew he couldn't leave her there, alone and vulnerable. With a soft grunt, he lifted her into his arms, holding her close as he made his way back toward his ranch. It didn't matter who she was or where she came from. What mattered was that she needed help, and he wasn't the type to turn his back on anyone in need. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and red, Michael carried the girl toward the Apache camp, knowing little of the storm he was about to walk into. He didn't realize that this small act of kindness would set into motion a chain of events that would alter his life forever. The Apache people were not ones to forget favors, and in the days that followed, Michael would find himself caught between two worlds. One where he was a solitary rancher, and another where he would become a hero in the eyes of a tribe he barely understood. But for now, all he could do was focus on the child in his arms, praying that she would be safe and that his simple act of kindness would not lead to something far greater than he ever imagined. As the days went by, Michael kept a watchful eye on the small Apache girl, whose name he had learned was Kaya. She had recovered quickly from her injuries, thanks to his careful tending and the shelter of his ranch. The more time he spent with her, the more he realized how different her life must have been. The stories of the Apache people were wild, full of fierce warriors and great leaders, yet Kaya was unlike anything he had ever expected. Her eyes, filled with both sadness and wisdom far beyond her years, spoke of a life lived in the shadows of a world that had no place for her. He had learned that her tribe had been scattered, driven from their land, and she was one of the last of her people to remain free. For the time being, she was safe under his roof, but Michael knew that safety would not last forever. Kaya, despite her silence, spoke in subtle ways, an occasional glance toward the horizon, her ears perked up at the slightest sound, her body always tense as if waiting for something to happen. It was clear that she did not expect to stay. One evening, as the sun dipped below the mountains, casting the valley in a soft golden glow, Kaya stood near the edge of the porch, staring into the distance. Michael approached her quietly, not wanting to disturb her, but unable to ignore the growing feeling that something was coming. He had spent years alone, but he wasn't used to feeling like this, not about something he could not see. "What is it, Kaya?" he asked gently. She turned her head, her dark eyes locking onto his, her face unreadable. "They will come for me," she said, her voice soft but certain. "The tribe will come, and they will want to thank you. You saved me. But the land here is not mine. I must return." Her words echoed in Michael's mind. They will come. He had been expecting something, but the weight of her words hit him harder than he anticipated. Kaya was not just a child in need of protection. She was a part of something much bigger than his small ranch. She was a symbol, a living piece of a dying culture. Michael had always prided himself on his independence, his ability to live off the land and rely on no one but himself. But now, standing on the porch next to Kaya, he realized that some things in life couldn't be handled alone. Some debts weren't paid in coin or kindness, but in something more profound, a bond that tied him to something larger than himself. As the night stretched on, Michael found himself staring at the distant mountains, wondering what the future would hold. He had only meant to help a child. He hadn't expected to find himself bound to a tribe, to a culture, or to a destiny that wasn't his own. Yet, here he was, standing on the edge of something that could change everything. The very next morning, as the mist lifted off the land, the first of the Apache riders appeared at the edge of his property, their silhouettes outlined against the dawn light. Michael's heart raced as he saw them approach. Kaya had been right. They had come. But what would they want from him now? And how would his life change from this moment onward? The riders approached slowly, their horses moving with a calm, measured rhythm, as if they had all the time in the world. Michael stood motionless, his hands clenched around the wooden porch railing, his mind racing. Kaya had stepped back inside, her expression unreadable as she disappeared into the shadows of the house. The sight of the Apache riders stirred something deep within Michael, a strange mixture of awe and uncertainty. These were not the warriors of the wild tales he had heard in his youth. These were men and women who carried themselves with quiet authority, their eyes scanning the landscape as though they already knew everything there was to know about him and his land. The lead rider, a tall man with long black hair braided with feathers, rode ahead of the group, his posture proud but not threatening. Michael's heart beat faster as the rider drew closer, the sound of hooves steady and rhythmic against the earth. As the rider halted in front of Michael's porch, he looked down at him with dark, intense eyes, as though measuring the man before him. Michael swallowed hard, forcing himself to stand tall despite the weight of the moment. "I am Chief Jean," the rider spoke, his voice deep and commanding. "I have come to speak for my people, for the one you saved." Michael's throat went dry. He had expected something, but he had not anticipated this, an entire tribe, ready to honor him for something he had done without thinking twice. The chief dismounted, his movements graceful and sure, and as he stood before Michael, there was a brief, tense silence. "You have done a great service," Chief Jean continued, his eyes narrowing slightly as if searching Michael's soul. "But your actions have bound you to us, whether you know it or not." Michael felt a chill run down his spine. He had always believed that his kindness was his own to give, that it didn't come with strings attached. But here he was, face to face with the reality that his actions had set something in motion that he couldn't control. "What do you want from me?" Michael asked, his voice steady despite the turmoil swirling inside him. The chief studied him for a long moment, and then, to Michael's surprise, he spoke in a softer tone. "We want nothing more than what is owed," Chief Jean replied. "You saved Kaya. You gave her a chance when none of us could. And for that, we owe you a debt." Michael blinked, struggling to comprehend what was happening. The leader of a tribe, speaking of debt and honor, and all because of a simple act of kindness. "But I didn't do it for anything in return," Michael said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of his confusion. Chief Jean nodded, as if understanding the unspoken truth. "And that is why you are worthy of our respect." As the words hung in the air, Michael realized that this moment, this meeting, was the beginning of something far bigger than he had ever imagined. He had unknowingly become part of a much larger story, one that stretched far beyond his little ranch and the quiet life he had built. And somehow, he knew that the days ahead would bring changes, challenges, and decisions that would shape his life in ways he could not yet foresee. Days passed, and the presence of the Apache tribe lingered like a quiet storm on the horizon. Michael found himself torn between his old, solitary life and the new path that was slowly unfolding before him. The chief's words echoed in his mind, a constant reminder that the kindness he had shown Kaya had woven him into the fabric of something larger than his ranch. Every morning, he woke to the sight of Apache riders moving across the plains, their presence both comforting and unsettling. He could feel their eyes on him, watching him, assessing him as they worked with quiet precision. It was as if they had come to understand him better than he understood himself. The bond between them, while unspoken, was growing stronger each day. One morning, as Michael worked in the barn, Kaya approached him. She had been more distant recently, her quiet demeanor a stark contrast to the warmth she had shown when she first arrived. Her dark eyes, however, held something that Michael could not ignore. "It is time," she said, her voice steady but filled with a sense of finality. Michael paused, his hand resting on the worn wood of the barn. He had known this moment was coming, but it still caught him off guard. "Time for what?" he asked, his voice almost a whisper. Kaya looked up at him, her gaze unwavering. "The tribe has spoken. They will give us a ceremony to honor you. They will repay you for what you have done, but you must come with us. It is the only way." Michael's heart skipped a beat. The thought of leaving his ranch, his home, felt like a betrayal to everything he had worked for. Yet, the pull of the tribe's gratitude, the weight of the debt they owed him, was something he could not ignore. "What will happen to my ranch?" he asked, his voice thick with uncertainty. Kaya's eyes softened, a hint of sadness in them. "Your land will be safe. You will not lose it. But you will be part of something greater now. You will see it with your own eyes." She turned and began to walk away, but paused after a few steps. "The chief has been waiting for you. He will speak to you. As he spoke to me. You will understand, then." Michael stood in silence for a long time, the decision weighing heavily on him. He had always prided himself on his independence, his ability to stand alone in a world that seemed to forget about men like him. But now, standing on the edge of something unknown, he realized that there was more to life than the quiet rhythm of his ranch. He had given Kaya a chance when no one else would. Now, the time had come for him to walk beside her and face the consequences of that simple act. He knew the tribe was calling him, and he couldn't turn away. He had no choice but to follow. That evening, as the sun set low over the mountains, Michael saddled his horse and made his way toward the Apache camp. Kaya had said the tribe would honor him, but he had no idea what that meant. All he knew was that the road ahead would be unlike anything he had ever experienced. The sound of his horse's hooves echoed in the stillness as he rode, and in that moment, Michael understood that his life was about to change forever. The ride to the Apache camp felt different now. The land stretched out before him like an unknown frontier, the dusty plains rolling endlessly into the horizon. Michael's heart raced with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Each hoofbeat felt like a step deeper into a world he had only heard about in stories. As he approached the camp, the atmosphere shifted. The air was thick with anticipation, the sounds of the tribe's daily life fading as he entered their presence. The camp itself was a small but bustling community, a far cry from the solitary life Michael had known. Tents and makeshift structures dotted the landscape, each one belonging to families who had found sanctuary here after years of hardship. The riders who had accompanied him stood silently at the edge of the camp, their watchful eyes never leaving him. Kaya had been quiet the entire journey, but now she stood by his side, a silent guide. "This is where you will meet the chief," she said, her voice steady but carrying an unspoken weight. "He will explain everything." As they approached the center of the camp, Michael could see the figure of the chief waiting for him. Chief Jean stood tall, his presence commanding but not intimidating. His eyes met Michael's, and for a brief moment, there was a recognition between them, as if the bond they shared had transcended words. "You have come," the chief said, his voice calm and deep. "You are not like others who wander these lands. You have shown kindness where none was expected." Michael swallowed hard. "I only did what seemed right," he said, his voice carrying the sincerity of his simple act. The chief nodded, a slight smile tugging at his lips. "That is why we honor you." Kaya stepped forward, standing beside the chief. "This is not just a repayment of a favor," she added. "It is a recognition of something much greater. You saved me, but in doing so, you saved all of us. The Apache have long been misunderstood, feared by those who do not know our ways. But you," she paused, her eyes searching Michael's face. "You saw us as we truly are. You saw the humanity in me when others would have turned away." The words hung in the air, their weight settling on Michael's shoulders. He had never seen himself as a hero. He had never expected anything in return for his actions. But now, standing in the presence of the Apache people, he realized that sometimes kindness ripples out in ways one can never predict. Chief Jean motioned for Michael to sit beside him. "In the ways of our people, we do not repay kindness with mere words or gifts," he said, his voice carrying a deep reverence. "We offer you a place among us, as a brother, a protector, a member of our tribe. You have shown us a truth that many have forgotten, that even in a world of violence and hardship, there is room for mercy and understanding." Michael's heart beat heavily in his chest. The offer was one he had never imagined, and yet it felt right. The land he had once claimed as his own now seemed so small, so insignificant compared to the honor the chief offered him. He had lived his life in isolation, in quiet defiance of the world. But in this moment, with the Apache people standing around him, he understood that there was something bigger than the land, something that connected all people, regardless of race or history. Kaya smiled softly at him. Her eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and pride. Michael had done more than save her. He had opened his heart to a world he never thought he could be a part of. He had bridged a gap that time and fear had widened. And now, standing in the heart of the Apache camp, Michael understood that his journey was just beginning. The days that followed were like a dream Michael couldn't quite wake up from. The Apache camp, which had once seemed so foreign, now felt like home. He spent his time learning their ways, sitting with the elders, and hearing the stories that had been passed down through generations. The more he learned, the more he understood how deep the bond between the Apache people ran, and how much they valued the land, the animals, and each other. It was a world built on respect for nature, for history, and for every individual who contributed to the tribe's survival. But even as he became more ingrained in their way of life, Michael couldn't escape the pull of his own past. The ranch. His cattle. The life he had built with his own hands. Every now and then, he would catch himself staring out over the plains, wondering if he could return to his old life and leave this new world behind. But Kaya's presence always brought him back. She had become more than just the girl he had helped, she had become a symbol of everything he had learned, everything he had come to love about the Apache people. One evening, as the sun dipped low on the horizon, Kaya approached him, her steps quiet on the earth. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice soft but carrying a weight that only he could understand. Michael looked up at her, his heart heavy with unspoken thoughts. "Ready for what?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. Kaya's gaze held his. "To become part of us. To accept the life we offer. To live as one of the Apache." The words were simple, but they carried a depth that Michael hadn't fully understood until now. The chief had offered him a place among them, but it was more than just an offer. It was a call to be something greater, to step away from his past and embrace a future that was uncertain, but filled with meaning. Michael had always been a man of action, a man who lived by his own rules, but now, he faced a choice that was not so easily made. Kaya took a step closer, her expression steady. "You saved my life. You saved the lives of others in ways you may never fully understand. But now, you have the chance to save more. To be part of a future that can change everything." Michael stood, his gaze fixed on the horizon, where the last light of the day was fading. He thought about his ranch, the life he had lived, the solitude he had grown used to. He had never wanted to be part of something larger. But now, standing here with Kaya, he realized that the act of saving her had done something to him. It had opened his heart in ways he hadn't known were possible. And now, it was time to decide. He turned to Kaya, his eyes meeting hers. "I'm ready," he said, his voice calm, but firm. Kaya smiled, a smile full of understanding. Then welcome home, she said, and in that moment, Michael knew that his journey was far from over. He had found a new purpose, a new family, and a new way of life. And as the last light of the day disappeared behind the mountains, Michael realized that he had made the right choice. The path ahead would not be easy, but it would be filled with meaning, and for the first time in a long while, he felt truly alive. Michael had settled into his new life with the Apache people more easily than he had expected. His days now began with the rising sun, the warmth of the morning light slowly spreading across the camp as he sat with the elders, learning the ways of the land and the deep, unspoken connection the tribe had with nature. Kaya, always by his side, had become his closest companion. She showed him the subtle beauty of their culture, the rituals that bound them to the earth and to each other. He had learned to listen to the whispers of the wind, the way the animals moved, and how to read the stars in the night sky. Every day brought new lessons, and Michael found himself growing more attuned to the rhythms of life within the tribe. But as the weeks passed, there was an undeniable pull in his heart, a longing for something familiar, something that reminded him of the life he had left behind. His old ranch. The cattle he had raised, the land he had worked. The solitude he had once craved now felt like a distant memory, replaced by the bustling energy of the Apache camp. Yet, every time he thought about returning to the ranch, his mind would drift back to the chief's words, to Kaya's steady presence, and to the future he had begun to build here. One evening, as the camp settled into a quiet lull, Chief Jean approached Michael. The chief's presence was commanding, yet there was a calmness in his eyes that made Michael feel as though he had known him his whole life. "You have made the right choice," Chief Jean said, his voice soft but firm. "The tribe is stronger with you among us. But the path ahead is not without its challenges. You must choose how you will walk it." Michael looked up at the chief, his heart beating a little faster. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice steady. Chief Jean studied him for a moment before answering. "You have shown us kindness, and in return, we offer you something great. But it will require sacrifice. You must decide whether you are willing to embrace this life fully, to become one of us in heart and soul, or if you will remain tethered to a past that is no longer yours to claim." Michael's mind raced as he thought about the life he had left behind. He had always believed in the value of hard work, in the quiet satisfaction of a life built with his own hands. But the Apache had shown him something different. They had shown him a deeper connection to the world, a sense of belonging that he had never experienced. Kaya's voice interrupted his thoughts, soft and reassuring. "The decision is yours," she said, her eyes meeting his. "But you are not alone. We will walk this path together." The weight of her words settled in Michael's heart. He had spent so many years thinking he was meant to be alone, believing that solitude was the only way to live. But now, surrounded by the Apache people, he understood that true strength came from connection, from being part of something larger than himself. That night, as Michael lay beneath the vast expanse of stars, he made his decision. He was ready to embrace this new life, to step fully into the world of the Apache, and to walk alongside the people who had shown him what it meant to be truly alive. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, Michael felt a sense of peace. He knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, he would face them with the strength of his new family by his side. Weeks passed, and Michael's bond with the Apache tribe deepened in ways he never imagined. The land that once seemed foreign and intimidating now felt like it was calling to him, as if it were part of his soul. He learned to read the movement of the animals, to feel the pulse of the earth beneath his feet, and to appreciate the silent beauty of the desert. Kaya was by his side, as always, guiding him through the rituals and traditions that had been passed down for generations. She taught him the meaning behind each symbol, each gesture, helping him understand the deeper connections between their people and the land. Every morning, he woke to the sounds of the camp, voices of men and women working, children laughing, and the occasional call of the wild birds. The air smelled of sage and wood smoke, and the sun, rising over the mountains, bathed the camp in a warm, golden light. Despite all this newness, Michael found comfort in it. He was no longer just a visitor, he had become part of something greater, something that felt more like home than his old ranch ever had. But even as he embraced his new life, there were moments of doubt. He sometimes wondered if the choice he had made was truly the right one. The Apache ways were different from everything he had known, and the weight of the past lingered in his mind. Yet, whenever those doubts crept in, he would see Kaya's face, her steady gaze reminding him of the life they were building together. She had become more than just his guide, she had become his partner, and the strength they shared was something neither of them could deny. One evening, as the fire crackled in the center of the camp, the tribe gathered for a ceremony. It was a simple event, but one filled with meaning. The elders spoke in soft tones, their words laced with the wisdom of generations. Michael stood beside Kaya, feeling the heat from the fire on his skin as he listened. The chief stepped forward, his presence commanding yet calm, and raised his hands in the air. "Tonight, we honor one who has shown us great kindness," he said, his voice carrying across the gathering. "A man who has become one of us, not through blood, but through actions. Michael Grant, you have given your heart to the Apache people. You are now one of us, as we are one with you." Michael felt a wave of emotion rise within him, the warmth of the fire not enough to match the heat in his chest. The chief's words filled him with a sense of pride he had never known. He wasn't just an outsider anymore. He wasn't just a rancher or a lonely man looking for purpose. He was part of something. He had found a family in the Apache people, and for the first time in his life, he felt truly at home. Kaya's hand found his, and she squeezed it gently, a quiet gesture of support. Her eyes met his, and in that moment, he knew that no matter what the future held, he was ready to face it. Together, they had become something stronger than they ever could have been alone. As the fire burned brightly before them, Michael felt a deep sense of peace. The winds of the past had carried him to this place, and now, standing here with Kaya and the Apache people, he knew he had found his true path. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in years, Michael was no longer afraid of what lay ahead. He was ready to walk this path with the people who had shown him what it meant to live with honor, courage, and love. And as the stars began to twinkle in the night sky above, Michael realized that he had finally found where he belonged. Months passed, and the seasons shifted in the desert, but Michael's life had never felt more complete. He woke to the sounds of the camp coming alive, the calls of the warriors, the soft murmur of the women preparing the day's meal, the laughter of children running through the open spaces. Each day was a new chapter in a life he had never imagined for himself. The Apache had embraced him fully, and in return, he had given them his trust and his heart. Kaya had become his closest companion, not just a guide, but someone who understood him in ways no one ever had. Together, they had learned the balance between the old world and the new, between the land they had both come to love. Michael's connection to the tribe grew stronger with each passing day, and so did his respect for their way of life. He helped in the fields, tending to the crops that were their lifeblood, and worked alongside the warriors, learning their methods of tracking and hunting. He also spent time with the elders, listening to their stories and absorbing the wisdom of generations. The bond he shared with Kaya had deepened, their partnership now something greater than it had ever been. They were no longer just two individuals brought together by fate, they were partners in every sense of the word. Kaya often looked to him with quiet pride, as though she had known all along that this was where he was meant to be. But even as Michael embraced his new life, the shadows of his past lingered in quiet moments. He sometimes found himself staring out over the plains, his thoughts drifting back to the ranch, to the life he had left behind. It was hard to shake the feeling that the man he had been, the rancher, the solitary figure who had found solace in the silence, was still a part of him. Yet, as he stood in the camp, surrounded by the people who had welcomed him with open arms, he realized that the past was just that, a part of who he had been, but not who he was now. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the stars began to twinkle in the dark sky, Chief Jean called for a gathering. The camp grew quiet, the flickering firelight casting long shadows as the tribe assembled around him. Michael stood beside Kaya, feeling the weight of the moment. Tonight, Chief Sha'an began, his voice carrying across the camp, we honor one who has become part of our tribe, not by blood, but by heart. Michael Grant has walked with us, learned our ways, and become one of us. We welcome him as a brother. The fire crackled as the tribe murmured in agreement, their faces filled with respect and admiration. Michael felt a swell of emotion in his chest. For the first time, he truly felt like he belonged, like his journey had led him to this moment. Kaya looked at him with a gentle smile, and in her eyes, he saw the same recognition that he had come to understand, that this was where he was meant to be. The tribe celebrated that night, singing songs of their ancestors and sharing stories of the past. Michael sat with them, his heart full of gratitude for the new life he had found. The future was still unknown, but he no longer feared it. With Kaya by his side and the Apache people as his family, Michael knew that he was part of something greater than he had ever imagined. As the night drew to a close and the stars above gleamed like tiny beacons in the vast sky, Michael felt a sense of peace settle in his soul. The man he had once been had faded away, replaced by someone new, a man who was not just a rancher, but a member of the Apache people, bound by honor, respect, and the unspoken ties that connected them all. He had found his place in the world, and it was here, with the tribe, under the vast, endless sky.